process because the decision making is out of your control, out of your hands, right? Because you gave it to a judge, and the judge is going to use common sense and do the best they can do. And so, people sometimes they have no choice and they have to go into a court process. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next slide because we can even dive deeper here into some of these processes. I think we talked about this already, but I want to just highlight this in one quick sentence. Private divorce mediation is out of court. You and your spouse negotiate mutually agreeable solutions. The goal is to get a settlement agreement. Okay, I feel like we've covered that. The mediator's role. So just to clarify, mediator does not represent either client, doesn't investigate or confirm the nature, extent, or value of the client's property. We don't look into your assets and liabilities. We don't hire investigators. We just facilitate proposals back and forth. We try and help you reach a mutually agreeable resolution. Each of you, the clients, retain your own individual attorneys, independent consulting attorneys, as I referred to earlier. And you can also retain other experts as needed. All right, let's look at the benefits of mediation, right? We talked about it being out of court. You can set your own timetable and your schedule. It's private. Well, that's amazing, right? Because what happens when you go into the courtroom? It's public and you're waiting there in the courthouse with everybody else. And sometimes the court has to continue your matter for another day. And maybe they don't even get to hear your case entirely on one day and they set you over 4 afternoons. So mediation offers that benefit of being private and you get to set your own timetable. The other beauty about mediation is, whereas the judge is bound by the law, the statutes and the case law, in a mediation, you have the power to craft your own solutions and you could be creative about it and decide your own fate. And so the studies show that it increases satisfaction and compliance. All right, I'm going to try and keep jumping through this. I hope you're with me. All right, so when you start the case, here is how it goes. First, you'll obviously want to consult with an attorney and assess the date of separation. And if there are child custody matters, by the way, I hate that word custody. If there are issues over parenting plans, division of property and support rights, you'll want to talk to your attorneys about that. Consider your options to stay out of court. Most people go to an attorney and the first thing they do is they sign up for filing a divorce petition and then their spouse files a response. Well, they don't even think about staying out of court because nobody's really talking to them about it. They've kind of heard about it maybe, but most of their friends probably have gone through a court process. It doesn't need to be the default. So ask your lawyers about it. Search for somebody who's friendly to out-of-court options if that is possible in your case. I want to say that with a big asterisk because I know that that's not right for everybody. Wish it were so, but it isn't. All right, so you file the petition and you've got a statutory time to file a response. And again, we're talking about California law, so please, if you're from out of state, understand this may not be exactly the way things work mechanically in your state. On the summons, that accompanies the petition, that's a court paper. There are automatic restraining orders. They apply to both spouses when the paperwork is when it's filed. You, the filing person, the filing party, are actually bound by it. And when it's served, the other party who got served with the papers is now automatically bound by these orders. People get confused when I say automatic temporary restraining orders. That's not having anything to do with domestic violence. It's about not canceling insurance, draining the bank accounts, and all that kind of stuff, taking the kids out of state without letting the other person know, suddenly having all these extraordinary expenses and closing down a business and doing all of those things, right? So the law just basically says, hey, don't play divorce games when you first file and when you're served with this petition for divorce. Okay, starting the case is done. Overview of the court process. So after the petition is the response. And I think Victoria is going to get into this in a little bit more depth, so I'm going to just gloss over this a little bit here. But basically, there is a mandatory court form, one for income and expense, and another mandatory court form for schedule of assets and debts. And this is basically kind of proving your income, or submitting proof of your income, I should say. And also for the asset and debt listing, that form that's mandatory in California is about including statements, account statements, verifying the value of the schedule, of the assets amount of debts. Okay, and that's called the schedule of assets and debts. Now, in terms of the next steps, it depends on what process you're in. So if you're in a court process, you're probably going to get a court, depending on what county you're in and how exactly they do things, but normally you're going to get set for some check-ins with the court, some settlement conference dates, some a voluntary settlement conference, mandatory settlement conference, trial setting conferences. There are types of conferences that get set along the way. And the status conferences are something that, you'll have to check in with an attorney about the requirement to appear for those and what happens at those various hearings, or they're not technically hearings, but they're conferences that are check-ins for the court. But what most people are interested in is, well, how do I get spousal support, my legal fees paid for? I want to stay in the house. I don't know who's going to pay the debt. There's so much going on at the beginning. I have no idea. It's just an overwhelm, right? So when you sit down and get a consult with the attorney, one of the things you're going to talk about is exactly what your status quo is in terms of how are the bills getting paid? What accounts are there? What are the emergency issues that are coming up for you? And so then you can decide with counsel whether or not to file if you have to use the courts and you can't get a voluntary agreement from the other party. Maybe you have to file a request for order for spousal support, child support, parenting time, visitation time, anything, legal fees, anything that is coming up for you at the beginning of the case. The trial at the end is the time and the place where the court actually sets the what we call the permanent orders. That's where custody gets set, and you'll know that parenting schedule going forward and the percentages of time. That's where property gets divided ultimately. And so the trial, a lot of people assume that they're just going to go sell their house 5 minutes after they file a divorce petition. Well, selling your house 5 minutes after the divorce petition could happen by agreement, but not necessarily by court. All right, I want to move on because I could talk about these slides forever, and we don't want me to do that. All right, so in the post-judgment or spousal support world, I don't like the word permanent spousal support because it's never permanent. It's always a moving target, and there are some definite considerations here under Family Code 4320. Courts will look at just a representation of some of those things that the court will look at. How long were you married? If it's over 10 years, it's likely going to be considered a long-term marriage. What are the ages and health of the parties? How is there, any is there an earning capacity for someone who's not working? How is working outside of your home affecting childcare responsibilities? What is your marital standard of living? Oh, that's a topic we could talk about for hours, and we won't because there's not enough time today to talk about it. But it's something that you could have a forensic accountant look into and help you determine is what was the marital standard of living? How much were you spending? What were the incomes? What did it look like? Were you overspending? Okay, we're moving on. And the way to resolve the court case, or if you are in a settlement process, the way to resolve the case is through a marital settlement agreement. And for some who, unfortunately, they're dealing in a high conflict situation, they're going to end up in a divorce trial. And there are ways to avoid that, by the way. I want to just give you like another minute or two on what limited scope or consulting services are. I told you before that they're a la carte services. Not everybody can afford to lawyer up for the entire case. Gosh, in the state of California, I think that most of the rates are at $450 and they go up high. I've heard of some attorneys over $1,000 an hour. I mean, most of us can't afford that unless you are in that very, top, the top, whatever, 1%, 10%. So for the rest of us, limited scope or consulting services are an option. There you could just decide with the attorney to build the representation one brick at a time. You can just keep adding as needed. And some of the limited scope services could be actually doing the entire case brick at a time. And some could be, I just need a consultation to a mediation. I need an independent consultant, or I need a second opinion even. All that's possible. I'm going to move on and talk about coaching in my last few minutes. And so, how coaching differs from therapy. I have a therapist on with me, and I actually made sure to check with her that I wasn't saying anything offensive. Okay, so the ICF is the International Coaching Federation, and the way they define coaching is partnering with the clients in a thought provoking and a creative process. What I'm trying to do as a coach is really help somebody maximize their personal and professional potential, getting them from where they are to where they want to be. And we do that by looking at envisioning, we do visualizations. We look at what's preventing or blocking them from moving toward the future. What we don't do is what the psychotherapists do, which is address psychopathologies, emotions, and exploring the past to understand the present. And I think that's a beautiful service. And I refer to therapists and really admire the work that they do. It's so important for people going through divorce to have either an individual therapist or to have tried marriage counseling before they even think about filing for divorce. But they work more in different domains than we do, and more with skill development and emotional regulation than does coaching. So yes, there's a time and a place, and they both have their benefits. And okay, so you see this, I'll call this the Venn diagram. I don't want to get too educational, academic here on you, but basically when we're doing coaching, we're looking at focusing on the future so you can be your best self as you go through the divorce. We want you to help create the goals. So you have goals in mind. It may be going through my divorce with confidence, finding my voice. I keep getting like stuff down, like my voice doesn't matter in this relationship. Okay, how do we work with that? And so I help you see your thinking. And so we want to create those outcomes. We want to stay, in building good habits and stacking those habits. I don't know if you guys have read the book Atomic Habits. I thought it was a fantastic book. But we want to help also accountability and make sure that you stay on track and hold you accountable. There are many practical applications for the business of divorce. The client, in our view and estimation, this is really different from an attorney perspective. We feel the clients are the experts on their own life, wants, and needs. Okay, you're whole and creative and resourceful. And so we look at your thinking. We're not working with telling you how to do things as we do in the attorney world. And I'm close to wrapping up here. I just want to say quickly the benefits of coaching, that we are an essential part of your divorce team. We can prepare you to bring your best self to the courtroom or the negotiation table to assist with the process and gathering of paperwork, to support transitions to new careers and relationships. And that pretty much is what we do, but we do it on a one-to-one basis, a group coaching basis. I am going to be offering group coaching for only 5 to 6 individuals. I'm probably going to be starting that in April, and I'm going to create a sign-up list, and anyone who wants can go to our website. It's the WO for like women over 40, WO40coaching.com. I'm going to put that up in just a second. It's for coaching during the divorce, post-divorce, and for transformational life coaching. And my information is right here, and I would love to connect. And so there is my information. And thank you so much for allowing me to talk constantly here for 25 plus minutes. I'm turning to Victoria. Allow me a second here to switch my screens.
Hello, my name is Victoria Kirilloff, and I'm a certified divorce financial analyst. I found this field after I went through my own very toxic relationship, and I had to use mathematical analysis to really extract myself from a highly abusive marriage. And it was only through this event that I realized how impactful divorce is in regards to your personal finance. So I became a certified divorce financial analyst, and my job is to help you replace your divorce fear with financial facts. Divorce is really a period of awakening, and you have the opportunity to lean into the process. I know it is scary. It is absolutely traumatizing. You are dealing with essentially the death of a relationship. And there's two events essentially that are equally traumatic for individuals, and that is death and divorce. So it's really important that you create a divorce team that is going to help you manage all of your emotions as well as the different processes so you are able to make data-driven decisions. Divorce is going to probably be the biggest financial transaction of your life. So you need to be aware of all of the ins and outs when it comes to your family's finances. People often think of divorce as, well, to begin with, we're going to go over a lot of different things. The first thing I would like to do is to make you guys aware of the different phases of divorce. A lot of people just think of the legal uncoupling, but there's actually a lot of other phases that you'll go through, including the emotional and social phase, as well as the financial phase. And then finally, you have the legal filing to deal with. The second thing we'll cover is getting familiarized with the financial disclosure documents. In the state of California, you'll be filing L142 and F150. As Lisa mentioned, this is your income and expense disclosure, as well as your schedule of assets and debts. They're incredibly important because they provide the basis for navigating your property division proposal. The third thing we'll discuss is learning how to shorten the divorce process, and most importantly, making it cost-effective by understanding how the financial impact is going to sit with both parties so you can put together a property division proposal and actually begin negotiating day one. The fourth thing we'll discover is talking about the differences in short-term support as opposed to long-term. As Lisa mentioned, for long-term support, it's a slightly different calculation that considers FC 4320 factors, and that's about 17 different things that are monetary and non-monetary, as opposed to temporary support, where that's just done by a computer-generated program called the Disso Master that considers your income. So there's a lot of nuance in divorce, as you're seeing. And the fifth and final thing we'll discuss is understanding what a marital balance sheet is and really how you use that to build a property division proposal. The bulk of your divorce is going to be financial in nature. So it's really important for you to really take good notes and ask as many questions as possible so you get your head wrapped around this. Now, my dad, I'm really standing on the shoulders of a giant, and his favorite saying to me was, if it cannot be expressed in numbers, it cannot be expressed at all. And as you are going through divorce, you're going to realize that there are a lot of monetary things and non-monetary. And if you're able to actually get a handle on the finances, you are going to be able to kind of control some of those non-financial components that are emotionally related. Most of us have unresolved financial feelings to begin with, and that's outside of the divorce process in general. So we are bringing, our financial education and background to the divorce table. So it's important that you kind of have an idea as to your role and relationship with money outside of the divorce. Otherwise, the divorce is going to be incredibly overwhelming, and you might find yourself, getting analysis paralysis. So the more you can lean into the numbers process, the better off you'll be. Now, this is something that a lot of people are just not aware of, but divorce is truly like a chemical equation. And there are different phases that have different weights to it. And so the first phase is the emotional phase. Now, this occurs when you decide or your partner decides that they would like a divorce, and it ends when you have communicated your desire and the other person wraps their mind around it and accepts it. moving out from there, you go into the social divorce. Now, this is when you start telling everybody, including your kids and family members, that you are going to be uncoupling. And it's important, especially if you do have kids, to let them know, mom is still going to be mom and dad is still going to be dad, or whatever your family dynamics look like. And the most important thing is elevating their needs to the top of the process. And you can work with a divorce coach like Lisa to really nail down your divorce story. So especially if you're dealing with younger kids, a lot of them don't know what this is. And you don't want them going to their friends to kind of get the 411. In actuality, you are going to be the best source of quality education and communication for your kids. So understanding the social component will kind of help keep things as clean as possible. Now, moving on from there, this is really where rubber starts to meet the road in the final third and fourth phase. The financial phase is really the bulk of the transition. Now, you are going from literally, it's a merger. When you get married, people don't realize it, but something called the marital estate is formed when you submit your marriage decree to the courthouse. Now, this essentially means, especially in the state of California, there's something called communal property. So everything that was earned during the marriage is a part of, it's owned by that marriage. If they're separate property, that's a completely different topic, and we'll kind of skirt over that. But if you do have separate property, you need to make sure that it's properly documented. So when you do go to understanding what the marital pot holds, you have proper documentation and you're able to pull out that separate property so it's not attributed to what the marriage owns.
Victoria, I just want to jump in here and say, yes, community property, except there are some folks out there who might have prenuptial agreements and postmarital agreements. So they may have contracted for different property schemes. So we just want to point that out as a little footnote. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, no, very good point, Lisa. And so this is where it's really important to keep in mind that everybody's divorce is unique to themselves and what they have established. But marriage is pretty much like a merger of two companies. Some people just kind of go with a general agreement. Others really take the time to figure out how these two entities are going to blend together. So with that in mind, you have the marital pot, and then you need to figure out essentially how you're going to divide it up. Barring any outstanding agreements, it's pretty easy. It's just pretty much everything divided right down the middle. But there's also a lot of other things that you have to consider, and we'll get into that later when it comes to dividing property, including tax considerations. Spousal support is another big issue, as well as child support. So when you start embarking upon the financial phase of divorce, it's best when you have all of your documents prepared, you know how much money you're spending, you know what there is, and then you're able to put together a divorce report that outlines just what your hopes and dreams are and what it looks like for you to split your assets with your partner. So the more prepared you are to go into mediation, the less likely you're going to wind up with a fourth and final phase that's contentious. As Lisa mentioned, there's a wide variety of legal support, but the thing that I have noticed in my practice is the clients that do not understand their financial facts end up in litigated or contentious situations because they have not taken the time to fully understand just what the financial impact is for them. So with this in mind, you essentially have those four phases: the emotional, social, financial, and legal. And it's best if you really build a divorce team out that is going to help you navigate each component. So for the first and second phase, working with a divorce coach is ideal. For the third phase, working with a CDFA like myself is going to help prepare you and really make your divorce more cost effective. And finally, working with an attorney to complete the legal filing is going to help you keep this cost effective and moving forward. So I'm a big believer in helping each person navigate divorce as a financial transition that considers just what your post-divorce life and financial goals are. you absolutely need to begin with an end in mind. You're going to experience something called decision fatigue. And that's literally where you have made so many decisions that your brain wants to throw in the towel, and you'll just accept whatever comes across your plate, unless you have a very clear goal in mind and you're working towards that. So you got to remember, your brain is designed for survival, not thriving. So when you are going through a divorce, you really need to help yourself out by getting really clear on your divorce goals. Now, when it comes to divorce, there's two different ways essentially your negotiation process is set up. There's interest-based negotiation, and this focuses on the why. This is very much so with what collaboration and mediation is designed around, and really producing win-win outcomes. Or you have position-based, which focuses on the what. This normally means that one party is the winner and one party is the loser. When you navigate through a divorce focusing on a position-based negotiation tactic, you're going to be very, well, in my experience, you're going to end up with a less than stellar settlement, because it's not really about what each person needs to survive. It's more about winning. And in family law, winning is not, winning means that someone else is losing. So divorce is this huge financial behemoth that you're having to navigate. And this is generally done and navigated with the financial disclosure process. So you're going to have to fill out the financial affidavit and exchange it with the other person. But a lot of us, we don't have a budget to begin with, or keep a list of the document or of the assets we have. So divorce is really going to be a huge paperwork process. So it's best to kind of get your mind around it by starting small. And the first place you want to begin is understanding what the marital estate owns and what it owes, as well as pulling out that separate property. So FL 142 is your schedule of assets and debts. So this is going to be, your house, tracing the down payment. If it was used with separate property, you have an opportunity to, pull that money back out and then divide the marital estate from that point. And then also any debts, home furnishings, it really can go as granular as you like, but you absolutely need to get a list of all of your major assets and debts going on. So the second document you're going to have to go through and fill out is FL 150, which is your income and expense declaration. All of us grew up in a capitalistic, consumptive society, and not too many people have had the opportunity to actually sit down and make a budget until their divorce. And I got to tell you, the number one thing you absolutely need to have is a freaking budget. This is going to help you understand just how much money it's going to cost for you to live in your post-divorce life. Now, when it comes to your income and expense declaration, the budget is literally about like 3 inches big. It's not designed to help you project your post-divorce cost of living. So you really need to be mindful and know that FL 150 is a good basis point. But as we'll talk about a little bit later, you absolutely need to drill down and make your own more comprehensive budget that is going to expand as to what your total cost of living will be post-divorce. So one big important thing to also note is that your total income is used to calculate your spousal support payment and your child support payment, especially for short term, using the DISO master calculation model. And so when you are factoring the total income, you need to figure out, especially if your spouse owns a business, if the business is paying any cost of living, because that might be not reported on their W-2 or their K-1, and it needs to be added back in. So there's just a lot of little nuance that goes into actually into calculating the total income. So as I was mentioning, you need to figure out what your post-divorce cost of living is. If you do not know this, it is going to be almost impossible for you to accept a spousal support amount because you don't know how much money you actually need to live. So as I mentioned earlier, this is right here where this white bar is. This is how big the DISO master or the financial disclosure document budget area is. This is a static document. Really, to have an informed and empowered divorce, you need to be putting together a divorce impact analysis report. Now, this is what I did in order to leave my partner, Voldemort. It was a highly contentious relationship, and I was only able to keep my emotions regulated and to make financially informed decisions by understanding what the uncoupling was going to be for me financially. So my firm, Divorce Analytics, we put together divorce impact analysis reports that drill down and make this process a lot easier for you to navigate. So all of the documents here are sample in nature. So the first thing that we do when we're factoring or when we're creating a divorce impact analysis report for you is understanding your scope of work. For our conversation today, we're just going to go over a few high-level concepts like spousal support, and it's really spousal support and property division. Now, as Lisa mentioned a little earlier, long-term spousal support is calculated a lot differently than short-term. So right here on the left, I believe it would be for you guys as well, there is a sample DISO master spousal support calculation. Now, this is really concerned with what your wages and salary is. And then it pops in the numbers and shoots out an amount that you guys will have to cover during the divorce process. Now, short-term support is really designed to preserve the marital standard of living as you navigate the divorce process. But for long-term spousal support, there's something called Family Code 4320 that outlines 17 different monetary and non-monetary factors that are considered when making these permanent orders. So as Lisa mentioned earlier, spousal support is always modifiable. And, if you're dealing with somebody that you might have some financial infidelity issues, or maybe you just don't trust them outright, figuring out, how you're going to be paid spousal support is really important, because it might make more sense to have them only pay a lump sum amount as opposed to a monthly payment. So when you're dealing with long-term spousal support, it's really important for you to conduct a marital standard of living. And then also from that point out, you project the future cost of living. And the budget blueprint that I have on the right, this is the base form that we use to figure out your marital standard of living and then to do the projection. So generally for a marital standard of living, you're going to go back at least a year, if not more, to really determine what the marriage was living, what the cost of living was like. Now, keep in mind, moving forward, there is probably going to be a shift of lifestyle, and you need to really understand if you're asking for the house, if you can afford it. I have so many clients that will make the mistake of, they don't come to me early enough in the process. They fight for the house and they never take the time to actually understand if they can afford it in the end. Or even more importantly, if there's a mortgage on the home, can they qualify for a refinance? And sometimes the answer is no. So you need to really understand the underlying financial mechanisms to really make sure you're asking for the right asset in divorce.
I just wanted to add, Victoria, that I see that a lot too with the clients who jump in and want the house. They get the house and then they realize when they go to sell it, there are some huge capital gains repercussions there that they hadn't considered. And so I try to point out to my clients that it's really important to get those financial, factors all like listed out, because you've got to make an informed decision there. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Well, it's so true. And I feel like clients that don't take the time to kind of understand their underlying financial mechanisms, they're the ones that end up with a divorce that costs them an arm and a leg, and they end up with results that are less than ideal. That's where breaking that divorce process down into those 4 phases and then building your team properly is going to help you avoid those negative outcomes. And again, a divorce coach is great for that emotional management and helping you figure out your divorce story for the kids. Then working with the CDFA is going to help make sure that you are asking for the right stuff. So finally, your attorney can come in and button everything up nicely. So moving right along into the property division proposal, this is the bulk of what I do. No matter what process you are in, you need to have a document that outlines just what a proposal is going to look like. What, you need to consider the other person's financial motivations and, start building a property division proposal based off of that. Making sure that if you don't trust your partner to pay you for long-term support, you figure out what that lump sum would be. And that's generally done through a present value calculation. And then you can use the marital property then to fund that. So instead of a 50-50 split, that other side, the payer of spousal support, they would then award you a little bit more of their property to then pay you the spousal support instead of a monthly payment. Again, making sure that you can afford the house, that's going to help you just kind of make this a less of an emotionally burdensome transition. For me, I was really obsessed with my house because I had fallen out of love with Voldemort, and I put all of my love, effort, and energy into that home. But then I realized after looking at my finances, the house was going to be an albatross around my neck, so we elected to sell the house. But I wanted to keep it so bad, and to this day, I can't drive by that neighborhood without having little pains in my heart. So if there is a family business, you need to figure out how to preserve the golden goose that's laying the eggs, but then also factoring in how the other person's shares are going to be bought out. And, there's so many little nuances with all of these steps. You absolutely, though, need to make sure you're factoring the tax consequences. Not all assets are created equal. And I often see it where somebody's spouse has proposed that they take the $100,000 Roth retirement account while they're giving my client the $100,000 401k account. Well, it looks like 100,000, so it's equal on paper, right? No. You absolutely need to factor in ordinary income tax on that 401k account because it's funded with pre-tax dollars, as opposed to the Roth account. Well, that's funded with money that you've already paid tax on. So that's going to remain at 100,000. But that 401k, you're going to have to pay maybe around 30% in taxes. So it's truly $70,000. So 100 versus 70, that's not fair, nor is it equal. So you need to make sure that you take a step back and consider how taxes are implicating everything. Another big thing I think people really forget is that your income tax status is going to change. When you're married, one of the benefits is getting the government's preferred tax status. So when you're married and you do a married tax, either married or filing jointly or married filing singly, it doesn't matter. As long as you are married, you're going to receive the lowest tax bracket that's available. But then after divorce, you'll either be single or head of household. Head of household means that you have a dependent living with you. Single just means that you're single. And unfortunately, you're going to pay the most amount of tax under that tax status. Head of household, you get a slightly little better deal, but really you can go from paying anywhere from a few hundred to a few $1,000s more in taxes each month. So not only are you going to have to be spreading your income over two households, you'll actually have less coming in. So making sure you understand just how taxes are going to be impacting your future life is going to be essential so you can take control over this process and not wind up, with a financial settlement that is not, worthy of your post-divorce life. So here's just a brief overview of the financial phases of divorce. The first thing you want to do is to set your divorce and financial goals. Get really clear on how you want your life to look. The second step is to understand what your current living lifestyle is costing, as well as projecting in the third step what your new lifestyle will be. So from that point out, you're going to take a step back and focus more on the assets and debts by creating a marital balance sheet. And then you'll move to step 5, which is creating a property division proposal. And after you have considered both of not only yours, but your spouse's motivations, you're going to be able to sit with them and to have a successful negotiation, whether that's through mediation, collaborative, or if you do have to go to court, you'll know exactly what you need and be able to articulate your argument even more effectively in front of a judge. Well, you absolutely need to know your financial facts. As you have learned with me over the short period of time today, you need to make sure you're aware of what your post-divorce life is going to cost. Otherwise, you're going to get analysis paralysis and not be able to move forward in the process. If you know just exactly what you need to survive, you know exactly what to ask for. So with that in mind, I thank you so much for your time. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or reach out to me directly.
Thank you so much, Victoria. I love the passion and enthusiasm you bring for financial subjects. It's amazing. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn over to Dr. Krell. I'm going to bring her on screen and just give us a moment here while we shift our PowerPoints.
Thank you so much. I am blown away by my esteemed psychologically savvy colleagues. Truly, truly exceptional. And I want to say, where were you when I was getting a divorce? Do you see my slides yet? Don't know if they're up yet. Oh, there we go. Okay, great. My name is Raina Krell, and I am a therapist. So you are going to get the therapeutic perspective. I've been in the field for 30 years, and I work with individuals, couples, families. One of my specialty areas is transitions, and divorce is included in that category. I too am divorced. I was divorced about 10 years ago. It was a 16-year marriage. I have two fantastic kids that not only survived the divorce, but thrived. They were 9 and 13 at the time. They are currently 18 and 23, and they made it through. So I speak from some experience personally, as well as wanting to share with you today some little nuggets from my career and the current work that I do. Okay, so let's start with divorce is a process. It's not an event. Either if you're choosing the divorce or the divorce has been chosen for you, in either circumstance, you need to look at this like this is a distance run. You need to pace yourself. You need to conserve your energy. Taking responsibility for your part is also a very important key takeaway. If you can stay in awareness around what you're contributing, you're ahead of the game. Seek professional support. Certainly legal guidance, like Lisa Zonder, financial guidance, like Victoria provided today so eloquently, or, and I should say the emotional support being psychotherapy, such as working with a therapist or a divorce coach. We have a saying in our field, if you do not take the time to heal, you will bleed on people that didn't cut you. That's serious. So take your mental health just as seriously as you would select your legal representative and your financial supporter. I would also say get organized, lean in, try to stay away from being in an avoidance space and not taking a look at all the pragmatics that you need to be aware of so that you, when you're on the other side of your marital settlement agreement, feel fairly good about the process and essentially the contents of your agreement. I would also highly recommend choosing the most peaceful option. I think that this is for your own benefit as well as everyone in your family system. I would also recommend staying in your integrity, being a principled person. You will thank yourself later. Remain big picture focused. Really ask yourself what really matters here. Let's not get stuck in the weeds arguing over little details. Let's make sure to pan back and take a look at what we care about. Our own mental health, the mental health of our children, our own stability, our own financial health, all those parts, that's what matters. I would say your mindset is everything. So I want to add some information around that. So I'm going to move forward with my next slide. This is, let's see, looks like it's taking a moment to load. What I've done is I've borrowed from DBT. DBT is dialectical behavioral therapy. It is really focused on emotional regulation. I see on the stream, oh, there we go. Okay, it did finally load. So there's tremendous skills to be found in DBT, a lot of tools that are available. But essentially, as both of my co-presenters have spoken about, it's this idea of showing up in your best self. So that's Wise Mind. That is a thoughtful integration between our emotional mind as well as our rational, logical mind. We need to do our best to show up in our wise mind. How do we do that? Let me share some details around that I think are really important for us to be aware of. This next slide is a quote from Stoicism. In essence, the concept is this: it's not the facts that upset us, it's the meaning we attach to them. This is really critical. If you can carefully evaluate what your mindset is, you have power. You have power to address what's happening in real time and to impact outcomes. What we know in the field of mental health is that if we insert some time and space between when something occurs, when there's an intensity, an event, a stimulus, we alter the trajectory and ultimately the outcome. So being very careful around what meanings we are attaching to events that occurred. And also, I would want to just remind everybody that there is literally maybe 1 or 2% of life that's urgent. 99, 98, 99% of life is not. So take a moment, take a breath, take care of yourself. It'll be a different outcome. Okay, so I want to talk about nervous system. This is a chart. I don't know if people are familiar with this, but the concept is right in the middle in the green zone. It's the window of tolerance. This is when we are calm and present. This is when we have the widest range of awareness. We have access to all sorts of options that are available to us. We're critical thinkers. We're capable. When we get super stressed, the hyperarousal, that's the fight or flight, our field of vision narrows and we simply go into what we call lizard brain. That is like our primal mindset, and it's just simply about just finding safety. We are not capable and clear when we are hyper aroused. Similarly, on the lower side of the chart is this collapse. That's shutdown, and also our field of vision narrows, and we're not able to be present and to evaluate circumstances that are, in front of us. So it is very, very, very critical to be aware of how to keep yourself in your window of tolerance. Why is that important? When we are calm, not only can we take care of ourselves, we are capable of reading legal documents. We are capable of evaluating financial circumstances. We are able to assess where we are and how to take care of ourselves. So I want to talk a little bit about what are some of what I call self-care essentials. And let me make sure that this popped up on your screen. There's just a little bit of a delay. Okay, great. Okay, these points that are listed in this chart, these are real-time tools, and they're also lifestyle choices. My top 2 recommendations for keeping yourself calm in real time, in public spaces, in court, in meetings with attorneys, etc., is drinking cold water and doing breath work. If you engage in both of those approaches in real time, you can keep yourself in that green zone that I shared on the window of tolerance slide. Additionally, I would highly recommend meditation. We have nourishment, and for that, I'm speaking not only about nutrition, but accessing things that are nourishing, activities, people, even if it's just setting things up for the future and planting them on your calendar, it makes a big difference in terms of well-being and self-care. Movement, this idea that we hold stress in the tissues of our body, and if we can move our body, we can release. Journaling, I highly recommend journaling. I know that it's a recommendation that a lot of people hear. They don't see maybe a lot of value in it. I would recommend journaling using bullet points rather than writing an essay, because I think then we get caught up in creating some sort of dialogue or, something that would, make our English teacher happy. Just simply some points and making some lists. The value of journaling as well is that it prevents us from putting all of our thoughts and feelings into an email and sending it and then regretting it. So journaling is sort of that pre-step. I also really like apps that can be supportive, like the Calm app. I put awe on this list as well. Awe is a growing field in mental health. The focus of awe is trying to find ways to soothe ourselves and to be literally in a place of wonder. And why is that important? Not only is it important for our mental health, but there are a lot of studies that are coming out right now about how it actually reduces inflammation in our body. And we know that inflammation equals disease, dis-ease. So accessing awe, number 2 way of doing that. The first one is finding moral beauty, which is a little hard to find in real time, but the number 2 way of doing that is exposing yourself to nature. I also recommend a time in, meaning rather than putting your kids in timeout, do a time in for yourself, step away, take care of yourself, return more regulated. Legal counsel, financial advisement, psychotherapy, a weighted blanket is fantastic for soothing our nervous system, and also choosing healthy companions. Okay, let's move right along. I wanted to just briefly touch base about counseling options. What typically is assumed when people say they're going to couples therapy is that there is going to be a focus on repair, right? We're going to go work on our relationship. We're going to go to couples therapy. Discernment counseling, which is a specialty area of mine as well, is actually a much broader based option. In discernment counseling, you identify these 3 pathways. Everyone in the room gets to weigh in, but they're presented to the group, to you and your partner, with a facilitating therapist present. And these 3 pathways are: we can maintain the status quo of this relationship, meaning we're not going to make any changes. The second pathway is we're going to head towards divorce. And then the third is we're going to do couples therapy. The idea here, though, with pathway number 2 of going towards divorce is that doesn't mean that the meeting ends and everybody moves in their own direction. We continue to meet to assist this family in disentangling. and getting support in doing that, which I would really have appreciated myself when I was going through my own divorce. The third pathway being couples therapy, that being that we basically take divorce and separation off the table for 3 to 6 months, and we really dial into working on the relationship. Should we then come to the decision point where we want to kind of continue and renew the relationship because things are going well, or if we've all come to the agreement that it's not, divorce can be a choice then. I like this ability, though, to really look at the different options because it gives a voice to those that are leaning out of the relationship rather than with this assumption that we need to fix this and that's the only reason to be in the room. Okay, moving along. The stages of divorce. Okay, I know probably everybody's heard of the stages of grief. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. The stages of divorce are similar. As you can see from what I put up on the screen for the stages of grief, it's actually quite messy. We do not follow a linear process with going through grief, nor do we with divorce. We move around to different stages. We revisit different stages. We have to make space for that. So I wanted to share that. Okay, let's say you have children. Not only are you divorcing, you are embarking on a co-parenting relationship. I really like this depiction. I like the words that are placed around co-parenting. It's a challenge to say the least. If you have children, you need to view this as long-term, and it could even be lifelong. What I also want to say about co-parenting is that it is the most unique relationship you will ever have with another individual in the world. Take some time in thinking about that. There's something very unique about it, and we can't apply the same mindset that we would to friendships or people that we completely do not have in our lives, because everybody's unified around the idea of wanting to raise healthy children. And if they are, this is the path forward. So moving along to this next slide, I wanted to show some guidelines for co-parenting that are great to be aware of. The first is acknowledging the other parent's rights and opinions. This is really important. As many of you know, the most basic human need for all people from the moment they're born till their very last day is to be seen, to be heard, and to be acknowledged. If you hold this awareness about yourself, about your ex-partner, about, parenting your children, it will not lead you wrong. There's also some other great points here in terms of communication, letting your child be the communicator with their other parents, supporting that, working as a team, respecting your co-parent's approach, which may be different than your own, setting some boundaries and helping your child do that if they need to as well. And then the final point is really a recommendation to keep trying, keep at the co-parenting. It might be really messy and awkward. It can get better. I work with a lot of parents on co-parenting, and oftentimes they'll circle back after the divorce and then after a year, and then they have a crop of new issues that they want to address. And there's so much to be had in finding ways to strengthen that relationship, even if the divorce was devastating emotionally and heartbreaking for one or both parties. I also would highly point out, please do not make the mistake of using the language when you're talking about visitation and back and forth with your kids to say my time. This is my time. This is my weekend. This is your weekend. Every child I've ever worked with is upset about this. They feel dismissed and disregarded. It's their time. And the other parents are just simply working to coordinate when their child visits them. It's not their time. I also like to work with parents on the idea of a time machine and imagining what type of relationship you would have with your child when they're in their 20s. Visitation is gone, and it's no longer about custody, and it's no longer about working to, figure out holidays and splitting up vacation schedules. It's different. And so if you can hold on to, what do I want my relationship with my child to be like 10 years from now, and then infuse that into real time, you're going to be much more concerned about the tone that you share and you infuse into all interactions than the details. Okay, I know that we're coming up on time, so I'm going to kind of slide through very quickly.
Raina,
If
I'm
this is
sorry. I just wanted to say something about that. I just loved what you just said. And I would add too that I've used visualizations as a coach to help somebody kind of like, in their mind's eye, right? Talk about and process like what it would be like to be at their child's wedding together with their co-parents and what that should look and feel like in their, in an ideal world. And so, and how to, sort of make that come into fruition and manifest it, if you will. And is there, I mean, obviously you can only control yourself, but I just love the idea of exploring like how things could work out for the best with visualizations as well.
I really like that, Lisa. And I'm so grateful that you do that with your clients. I always like to think of Maya Angelou, right? It's not what somebody did or said, or, it's basically the tone. It's basically how they made you feel that matters. So if you can really hold on to that mindset.
Love that. Thank you.
Of course. Okay, so this is a great model, BIF. It was developed by Bill Eddy, who's an attorney and a therapist. I use this template all the time in working with clients. It stands for brief, informative, friendly, and firm. It's used as a template for communication. It's wonderful to have this in your mind as you're writing an email. You can put everything down and then you edit and you find ways to have it fit your message into this template. And it usually lands so much better when you consider these elements. And so I highly recommend it. If there's high conflict, I would recommend getting this book. It's on Amazon. This template is also very helpful for all interpersonal relationships, parent-child, colleagues, family members, not only an ex-partner. Okay. I want to just quickly highlight, how do we prepare and protect ourselves for life transitions? And it can include not only going through the divorce process, but also all the chapters that come in that, as well as transitions in general. So these 6 areas are essentially used by mental health to identify protective factors. I want to say that life has adversity. We all know that. If we have these areas strengthened, all of these areas, even if some of them are super strong and some of them were a work in progress, they serve as shock absorbers for what life can throw at us. And finally, this is one of my favorite memes: be brave as you're going through this process. Even if you're not, pretend to be. So there I am. I'm at the end of my portion, part 3 of this presentation. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity and putting this together, Lisa. My website is on the bottom of the screen. All my contact information is easily found on my website. If you would like to reach out and connect, if you have any questions about anything that I talked about today or anything else related to mental health, I'm happy to respond and see how I can support you and your family.
Thank you so much, Raina. I appreciate that. Fantastic visual. Love that. Love that. Okay, so we are nearing the end of our presentation. We have about 10 minutes left. I'm wondering, Victoria, I think we we were going to address a couple of questions. And so so one of the questions is about the house and what kind of, factors the client should be thinking about financially. I know you addressed that to some extent, but maybe just a short review there, because that is one of the assets that people are most, interested in keeping. And then sort of like you obviously told your own divorce story about like really wanting that house and even driving past it, and oh, my heart went out for you in driving past it and not being in it anymore. But tell us a little bit more, if you would, from the financial perspective of what are the considerations for keeping the house.
Well, the house is generally kind of our hopes and dreams, and it can actually end up becoming a marriage mausoleum. And so you need to really almost take a step back and view this completely as a financial event. A house is a home only when you make it as such. And so you need to kind of keep that in mind. If you're able to create those wonderful feelings in one space, you're going to be able to do it for the other. And so if you're able to look through the financial lens and really understand if the house is something you can afford, that's going to reduce your post-divorce stress by a long ways. And so the first thing you really need to do is understand how much your post-divorce life is going to cost. Just because you can qualify for a mortgage in your new home's amount doesn't mean it's a good financial decision. You absolutely need to know how much your total cost of living is, so you don't wind up in a position where you are house rich but cash poor.
What percentage of income should people be looking at? Like, so my housing expense total, PITI, all in, principal, interest, tax, insurance, should be what roughly of my total overall budget?
Ideally, not more than 30%. I'm a little bit more conservative. I believe in saving for a rainy day. When you sit with most mortgage lenders, they're looking for a debt to income ratio of around 55%. So they don't want you to have more than 50% of your income going towards debt payments. So that's not just the house, though. That's also going to be, student loan payments or automobile payments. You really need to have a comprehensive idea as to where all of your money is going. So a lot of people, just because the bank allows you to take out that much money, they're not looking out for you at the end of the day. They're just making sure that you fit their metrics. They aren't sitting down to make a budget with you to figure out, just exactly how much this is going to cost. So the other big thing is you need to make sure that if you're buying the other person out, what are the terms of that? Is there enough property that you can take from retirement assets to buy that person out? But a lot of the times, especially in California, where there's home values that are just astronomical, there's not enough assets to buy the other person out. And so I know a lot of people, they have considered doing, waiting until the kids are out of college until they then split the house up. But you really need to have a good working relationship with your person, because you're going to still, see each other. But a lot of times, if you continue to be on the mortgage with that other person, your credit report is tied to them.
Right.
So if they don't pay the mortgage, that's going to be on you. And so even though they might be financially obligated to care for that home, if you continue to own that house together post-divorce, you need to make sure that there's some backup mechanisms in place so you don't wind up, on the wrong end of that deal.
So make sure your credit's protected as well. And Raina, what about just the fact that like it's so hard emotionally? Like the house is like the place that we are with our children and our families. And I think you called it a marriage mausoleum, Victoria. I'm learning new things here just with you ladies. This is amazing. But Raina, I guess I'm just wondering too, like so many of my clients, you could tell them this rational stuff and it's absolutely sound advice, but I mean, nobody kind of feels that way when they're going through their stages of divorce, right?
Very true. Very true.
So what do you say?
it's hard because, as I was sharing, you need to be in that window of tolerance so that you can make good, solid decisions. But that doesn't mean that you're not going to have attachments to your home and to what's familiar. And it's very difficult when the numbers are not supporting the dream. But it is important to look at it like it is a loss, but we're going through a transition. We're losing something, but we're starting a new chapter.
Right.
We're starting a new beginning. And so if you can hold an individual or a family through that understanding that home is where you make it, the sanctuary is where you create it. And, to the points that you were making around it, Victoria, I mean, in my field, we call it the marriage museum. So the same idea, right? It's usually not as gratifying once you feel like you fought the fight and you won. You look what you got, and then it feels different. The kids say it feels different. The neighbors, I mean, all these different things, and you start to realize what really matters. So that's why I was recommending being big picture focused. What really matters? What matters is that I can pay my bills and I can go on some vacations and I can fund my retirement and I can take care of myself, my children, maybe my aging parents. I mean, kind of taking that step back and looking at the larger picture.
Love that.
Exciting to purchase a new property and to decorate it the way that you want, and it doesn't have all those familiar pieces. Like, again, to your point of like, if we can envision, if we can kind of get in that time machine and take a different point of view, take a peek at maybe something else.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I've had a client really recently who I did a visualization with, and we were sort of like in her mind's eye, her eyes were closed and she was breathing very calmly in a really good space. And we talked about like, what does this space look like? Where is it located? What's the climate? Like, what does it feel like? What does it look like? And she's like, you know what? I would decorate it so differently. It would be mine. It would, and so it's amazing until you start actually like going through the exercise for yourself. It's hard to visualize what the moving on looks like or feels like. But when you start going through that, you get, it kind of opens you up to like new experiences and, making something your own. I can't tell you how many people say to me, well, my ex is finally out and I had to sage the house, and, just funny little rituals and things that people do and change all the decorations and the furniture and so forth. So it's an emotional issue. It's a financial issue for sure.
Yeah.
Obviously there are legal issues involved too, but thank you so much. You have been an amazing panel. I thank everybody who has joined us or eventually will be watching us on social media. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share this educational experience with us. I've learned, I know from my co-panelists, we are really hopeful to be able to bring additional presentations in the future. And this has been so much fun. I thank you. This is, our first time presenting live on social media through my organization anyway. I know I've appeared for others on theirs. But this has been so much fun. I'm glad I figured out how to use all the controls to make all the PowerPoints work. So yay to all of us for doing that. Thank you so much, everyone. I hope that we've answered questions. And again, all of the contact information for all of our professionals either were shown on the PowerPoints, and you can probably replay. I think I'm streaming this on Facebook and LinkedIn, and I'm not sure where else. I think also Victoria has her, this presentation, her social media feeding this as well, and it'll be on there hopefully for a few days. Raina, I don't know if, Dr. Krell's is on there, but anyway, I'm not sure, but hopefully people can find you, and fingers crossed. There we go. Okay, and thank you, everybody. This has been a lovely presentation.
One thing I would like to leave everyone with is I think it's really important that you guys figure out like your own personal divorce team, but there is a lot of value that you can gain from having divorce professionals that have actually lived through this experience. as Dr. Krell mentioned, she has truly gone through the emotional upheaval as I have as well of the divorce process. And it is really empowering to be able to just let it all hang out with your professionals. And, no one's looking at you through, judgmental lenses. But I have found, in my experience, I related better to people that have gone through a divorce because they understand just what it feels like to be packing up that house or to be fighting for it, and to try to be working with your co-parent and they're actively, sabotaging you. But really, this is your divorce and you need to, build your team out to fit your needs. And that's where, when you break it down into the different phases, you know exactly who you should go to.
Yeah,
And
I think it's important that you find someone who's a fit. Absolutely.
Mhm.
And there are some clients who are really nice individuals and they're not necessarily a great fit, because the personalities and styles are very different. And so it's really important, just like finding a therapist, finding a financial professional, and or finding an attorney or a coach, you really have to be a good fit. And if it's not, it's okay to move on. There's no shame in it, right? I mean, we all have to honor who we are, how we show up, and who we fit with, and we have to be really comfortable with our professionals. It's amazing how all three of us have been through divorce at some point. Statistics were 50%. What is it?
It's 100% with us.
It's 100%. We have a
How
saying.
is hiding statistics on us? I think it's just a lot worse than we
That's
think.
right. We're
Anyway.
all wounded healers. That's
We're
what
all wounded healers. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I don't want to exceed our time. I'm going to end our live stream. And thank you so much again. Happy
Thank you.
weekend. Happy Friday.